Hello friends and welcome to my new video. Today I'll be talking about an actor, a star, a superstar who really needs no introduction to the world of Hindi cinema. He is undoubtedly a mega star. He is the star of the superstar of the millennium, the big B, the one and only Amitabh Bachchan. So much has been said about Amitabh Bachchan that I really have very little to add to what already has been said. He is a living legend. He is perhaps India's greatest superstar, and more importantly and more relevantly, he is someone who has over the years kept reinventing himself to stay relevant, to stay right at the top of his game even at this age. So discussing Amitabh Bachchan and his charisma, his talent, his superstardom really is not what I'm going to talk about in this video. That is known to everyone. But what I want to talk about in today's video are some underrated performances of Amitabh Bachchan. And over the years, despite his fame, despite his phenomenal success, there have been films, there have been performances which have sadly been underrated or lesser appreciated than usual, even in the case of Amitabh Bachchan. So today I'll be talking about 10 such films, 10 such performances which according to me are underrated in general. The first film I want to talk about is from 1973. It's a film directed by C.V. Sridhar, and it's called Gerry Chaal. It stars Amitabh Bachchan, Hema Malini and Jitendra, along with Prem Chopra and Bindu in the lead roles. It's perhaps the only instance where Amitabh Bachchan and Jitendra have acted in a movie together. But that apart, it's quite a well-made movie, and it's grossly underrated according to me. It's a thriller where Amitabh Bachchan plays a bank employee whose father worked in the same bank and committed suicide because of his inability to pay back a loan which he had embezzled from the bank. And as Amitabh gets involved in the same case and he tries to keep things under wraps, he starts getting blackmailed by someone else who knows his secret about him and his father. And how he gets out of it is what Gerry Chaal is about. It's a well-made movie. Unfortunately, doesn't get the kind of prominence or attention it deserves. But Amitabh Bachchan puts in a superb performance as Ratan, a man trapped by guilt and trapped by the consequences of his father's actions, and how he goes down to unraveling the mystery behind his father's suicide and the huge amount of money that was embezzled from the bank. How he gets out of it is what the movie is about. Hema Malini plays the role of his sister, and Jitendra plays her love interest, and he has quite a significant role in the movie as well, which you will come to know as you see the movie. But do see it. Gerry Chaal is one of the first instances of Amitabh Bachchan in a slightly greyish role, and I won't say it's the first instance, but one of the earlier instances of Amitabh Bachchan in a slightly greyish role, a slightly complex role, and he puts in a fabulous performance. Sadly underrated and underappreciated, but do watch Gerry Chaal. It's a wonderful movie and a great performance by Amitabh Bachchan. The next film I want to talk about came in the year 1974, and it was directed by Narendra Bedi, and it stars Amitabh Bachchan and Maushami Chatterjee, and it's called Bainam. It's another thriller. It's loosely based on Alfred Hitchcock's The Man Who Knew Too Much. It's there are influences from Hitchcock's classic movie, but on its own, Bainam stands tall as a taut and gripping thriller. And Amitabh Bachchan plays a happily married man, and he and Maushami find themselves involved in a murder attempt while they're returning from a late night party. And they save the man who was about to be murdered, and they put him in hospital, only to realize that they've got themselves involved in a mess. And he keeps getting threatening calls to stay away from the case and to hand over some evidence which he has found from the injured man. And it ends up with his son being kidnapped, and the kidnapper demanding the evidence and a ransom in exchange for his son. And how Amitabh goes about finding out the identity of the kidnapper and saving his son from him is what Bainam is about. It's a very good movie. It's a very thrilling and gripping movie, and Amitabh puts in a fabulous performance. Bainam also didn't do very well at the box office. It was, I think, just about an average or below average movie at the box office, but a superlative performance from Amitabh Bachchan, which should not be ignored. Do watch it if you haven't till now. It's a great movie. The next movie I want to talk about is again from around the same period of 1973-74. I think this was released in 1973, and it was directed by the well-known art director of those days, Sudhendu Rai. And it's based on a short story called Ras by Narendra Mitra of Bengal. And the movie was called Saudagar, starring Amitabh Bachchan, Nutan, and Padma Khanna in the lead roles. And it's a wonderful movie. It's a beautiful movie about a man who's a good trader. That's Amitabh Bachchan. And he falls in love with this woman in the village, and he has to pay her money, to get married to her. And in order to get money, he gets into another marriage with this widow who makes this wonderful gur. And it's because of the gur she makes that Amitabh Bachchan becomes a much sought after good trader in the market. And he decides that if he marries her, he doesn't have to pay her for the gur. And in that way he can save money to eventually marry the woman he loves. And Amitabh puts in a brilliant performance. Of course, as expected, the film is dominated by Nutan, who puts in a fabulous performance as always. But for Amitabh Bachchan, in the early days of his career, to stand up matching the histrionics of Nutan is no small feat in itself. And Saudagar, I think, is one of Amitabh Bachchan's great works, which is sadly underrated and not spoken about so much in the wake of his future superstardom and the phenomenal success he went on to achieve. But do see Saudagar. It's a wonderful movie. It's a beautifully made movie by Sudhendu Rai, and it boasts of some superb performances from Nutan, Padma Khanna, and not in the least Amitabh Bachchan. It's a great movie. Don't miss it if you have so far. Saudagar is a must watch. The next movie I want to talk about actually came much later. It was released around 2010, and it's a movie made by Ram Gopal Verma, a movie called Ran, which means war. and it has Amitabh Bachchan, Paresh Rawal, Ritesh Deshmukh in the lead roles, along with Gulpanag. And it's really an underrated movie because when one talks about Amitabh Bachchan and Ram Gopal Varma's association, either one talks about the brilliant Sarkar or the abysmal Ram Gopal Varma ki Aag. But in between those two ends of the spectrum lies a great movie, Run, which was sadly missed out at the time of its release. Amitabh Bachchan plays the role of the owner of a news channel, and the entire movie is a thriller based on the politics of news channels and their association and their nexus with politicians and other leaders, and how the truth is often twisted and sold out for TRPs. It's a great movie. Sadly, missed out by a large number of people. I don't think Run did very well at the box office when it was released. But do get hold of a DVD or see it on YouTube, where a link exists of the movie, and watch it simply for a superb performance by Amitabh Bachchan as Vijay Harshvardhan Malik, the owner of a prominent news channel. It's a great movie not to be missed. Run. The next movie I want to talk about came at a time when Amitabh Bachchan's superstardom was at its peak. It came from a banner which was a topmost banner. It was written by Salim Javed, who were instrumental in creating the angry young image of Amitabh Bachchan and in a large way responsible for his superstardom. The movie I'm talking about is Kalapathir, which was released in 1979 under Yash Raj Films banner, directed by Yash Chopra. Kalapathir unfortunately did average business at the box office. It really didn't set the box office on fire as was expected from a team that had earlier given Diwar and Trishul. So Kalapathir was a disappointment in terms of its box office results. But in terms of performance, in terms of character, I think Vijaypal Singh of Kalapathir, portrayed by Amitabh Bachchan, is one of his finest performances. Amitabh Bachchan plays the role of an unknown, unnamed coal mine worker working silently in the coal mines of Dhanbad. And buried inside him is a fearful secret of his past, where he was a naval chief, a chief officer in the Navy, and who was disgraced and kicked out of the Navy because of a supreme act of cowardice which cost the life of 300 men on a ship. And it's these demons that he's trying to forget and fight constantly as he lives a life of anonymity and solitude in the coal mines of Dhanbad. It's a fabulous character etched by Salim Javed and brilliantly portrayed by Amitabh Bachchan. That seething anger, that hurt, the sorrow tinged with fear, tinged with embarrassment, and all that conveyed just by his eyes. He speaks very little in the movie, but it's his eyes which do the talking most of the times. And you see Vijay and you know that something is seething inside him, something is boiling inside him, and he's just trying to keep a lid on things and go on with his life and not stir the nest of the past. It's a fabulous role, fabulously written by Salim Javed and brilliantly enacted by Amitabh Bachchan. I think it's one of his best performances ever. Unfortunately, didn't get the kind of recognition and appreciation it deserves. But do watch Kalapathir and rediscover the actor in Amitabh Bachchan, who often tends to get overshadowed by the superstar Amitabh Bachchan. See Kalapathir, you won't regret it. It's a fantastic movie. The next film I want to talk about is made by one of my favorite directors, and I think one of Amitabh Bachchan's favorite directors as well. It's Alap, directed by Rishikesh Mukherjee. Alap came in 1977 or 78, I think, again at the peak of his superstardom. And unfortunately, Alap flopped. It was a box office flop, and it was primarily because it went against the image of Amitabh Bachchan at the time, that of the angry young man, that of the complete entertainer, because Alap was neither of those two. It was a serious movie about the son of a rich, well-to-do man who leaves his house after an argument with his father because of his love for music, and he goes and stays in a basti to learn music from Chaya Devi. Amitabh Bachchan in the role of Alok puts in an absolutely superb performance, and Alap is, according to me, one of the best collaborations of Rishikesh Mukherjee and Amitabh Bachchan. Sadly unappreciated at the time, but over the years, a lot of people have realized what a great movie Alap is. If you haven't seen it till now, do see it and rediscover the brilliance of Amitabh Bachchan. Alap by Rishikesh Mukherjee. The next movie is again a beautiful movie. It's originally it was a Bengali movie called Akash Kushum, directed by Mrinal Sen, and the Hindi one was directed by Basu Chatterjee in 1979, called Manzil, starring Amitabh Bachchan and Maushmi Chatterjee. And it's a sweet, wonderful, beautiful movie. And Amitabh Bachchan has a lot of shades in this role. And I think it was quite a gutsy role for Amitabh Bachchan to accept, again at the time when he was the reigning superstar and had a completely different image in the market than what he did in this movie. And Manzil is a beautiful movie, and very good performances from Maushmi Chatterjee, Rakesh Pandey, a lot of other people who are there in the movie. Sorry, not Rakesh Pandey. I think Romesh Sharma was the other actor in Manzil. I'm sorry. But Amitabh Bachchan puts in a wonderful performance, sadly unappreciated and much underrated. But do watch it today. Manzil has some great songs which have become cult favorites over the years. Tum Ho Meri Dil Ki Dhadkan and Rim Jhim Gire Sawan by R.D. Burman. The songs have become great hits over the year. The movie didn't do all that well as expected, but do watch it for Amitabh Bachchan's superb performance. Manzil by Basu Chatterjee. The next movie I want to talk about came in 1975 and directed by Shankar Mukherjee. This is Farar, which is quite a good movie about a man who becomes an escaped convict, a murderer, who takes shelter and refuge in the house of his ex-lover unwittingly, an ex-lover who's married to the police officer assigned to the case of arresting him. So it's quite an interesting script. And Farar was a good movie. It was a well-made movie. Unfortunately, didn't do all that well at the box office. And one of the reasons, I think personally, is somewhere down the line it got lost in between a thriller and an emotional drama. It really couldn't keep the balance between the two genres, and hence ended up being neither of the two. I think that was the problem. Personally, I think that was the problem with Farrar. But performance-wise, Amitabh Bachchan puts in a wonderful performance. He is absolutely brilliant in his depiction of a man wronged and taking revenge, and then on the run, and then his reaction when he discovers that the house he's taken shelter is his ex-lover's house. He puts in an absolutely fabulous performance in a complex role, and he's really the best thing about Farrar. If you haven't seen Farrar, do see it just because of his great performance. The next film I want to talk about is perhaps my personal favorite of all these films that I'm discussing in this list. And it's a movie, again, directed by Hrishikesh Mukherjee. And it's based on a Bengali movie called Amishe Aur Shokha, which had Uttam Kumar in the lead role. And its Hindi counterpart is Bemisal, with Amitabh Bachchan in the lead role, along with Rakhi and Vinod Mehra. Bemisal is simply my favorite Amitabh Bachchan Hrishikesh Mukherjee movie, and the movie stands because of Amitabh's performance. According to me, he is towering in this movie. His personality, his attitude, his swag, his the whole persona of Amitabh Bachchan is at its best. The magic of Amitabh Bachchan is at its best in Bemisal. He puts in an absolutely memorable performance as Dr. Sudhir Rai, the child specialist in Bemisal, and he is simply outstanding in the role of a person who's been brought up by his best friend's father, and how he repays that debt is what this movie is about. And it's about a wonderful, beautiful, intricate relationship that he shares with his best friend's wife, Rakhi. And it's just a superb movie. The sensibilities of Hrishikesh Mukherjee, the performance of Amitabh Bachchan, Rakhi, Vinod Mehra, just make this movie an outstanding movie. I don't think Bemisal did too well at the box office either. But as a movie, as I said, it's my favorite Amitabh Bachchan Hrishikesh Mukherjee movie. And there's this last scene, or a scene right towards the end of the movie, in a jail between Amitabh Bachchan and Rakhi. And Amitabh Bachchan is mind-blowing. He is absolutely awesome. Do watch Bemisal. I've watched it countless number of times. I'm sure most of you have watched it a number of times as well. Watch it once more just for Amitabh's performance. It's brilliant. Bemisal, directed by Hrishikesh Mukherjee. The last film on this list is perhaps my favorite Amitabh Bachchan underrated performance film, and it's directed by Jyoti Swaroop, and it came out in 1971, and it's Parwana, starring Amitabh Bachchan, Naveen Nishchal, Om Prakash, and Yogita Bali. And as far as performances are concerned, I think Amitabh Bachchan is simply magnificent in this movie. He is simply superb in the role of the silent lover of Yogita Bali, who only considers him as a very good friend, while she falls in love with the flamboyant and debonair Naveen Nishchal. And the hurt, the anger, the spurned lover, Amitabh Bachchan, and how he decides to take revenge on his love being spurned, is what Parwana is about, and he is absolutely superb. It's a negative role. I won't say it's an out-and-out negative role. It's a role with dark shades of grey in it, and Amitabh Bachchan is absolutely magnificent. Unfortunate that Parwana didn't do very well at the time it was released, but over the years Parwana has acquired a cult status and is considered a huge favorite amongst a lot of Amitabh Bachchan fans, and it's not without a reason. It's one of his better performances, which at that time sadly went unnoticed. But today, a lot of people I know love Parwana and love Amitabh Bachchan's portrayal of the rejected, spurned lover. He is magnificent in the movie. And I think I read in some interview that Om Prakash, who was quite a close friend of Dilip Kumar Saab, had mentioned to Dilip Saab after a day's shooting of Parwana that there is this new guy, and I've just shot a scene with him, and the intensity he exudes and the kind of performance he's putting in the movie, mark my words, he's going to be a huge star in the future. That impressive Amitabh Bachchan was, and how right Om Prakash Saab was to predict that the next superstar was here. A fantastic performance, underrated at that time, and one of his best performances of all time. Parwana, directed by Jyoti Swaroop, starring Amitabh Bachchan, Naveen Nishchal and Yogita Bali. Don't miss it if you have till now. Well, so these were my personal 10 movies where I feel Amitabh Bachchan has put in great performances which were underrated. Do let me know what you think of my list of 10, and if you feel that there are some other movies of Mr. Bachchan which are underrated and should be in the list, do mention them in the comment section. And maybe I will do a second part, because Mr. Bachchan has so many great performances, some of which have been overlooked over the years. So let me know what you think of the video, and until the next time, bye for now.